Hello everyone, what's going on? GarethTheMaster974 back again today doing a hammer tutorial after so long, and today I'm going to go over how to create the box dropper from Portal, but with a unique twist in that I'm going to turn it into a Func instance, and I'm going to show you how to use it in at least Portal 1, because the way instances work in Source Engine games prior to games like Portal 2, Left 4 Dead 2 is actually kind of worse and different. So I'm going to have to outline that later, and a prerequisite, I'm using Hammer++, that is a must. So that is just to be able to create instances in the first place. One of the good things about Hammer++ is the ability to create instances from a selection of objects, and I believe instances work around the origin, so this test example area here where I'm going to add the instance box dropper isn't on the origin, it's actually, well, the origin's over here. So first things first, we're going to want to create a prop dynamic, and this is going to be the box dropper. Yeah, it's just going to be the box dropper. So let's just load up the model browser, and I get reward points as well. Thank you Microsoft. I just need to redeem those later. Redeem those points. So I need to search for box dropper, which is this right here, this tube. And it depends on where you want the origin to be, so let's just leave it there. And it looks black because it's the real-time preview. If you go for 3D textured, then yeah, it should look a little bit better. And then what I'm going to do is just shift drag the box dropper, and that duplicates it and creates a box dropper cover model, and that's in exactly the same place as the box dropper tube, like so. And we just want to name the box dropper cover to something like box dropper cover. So excuse me for that. And then, yeah, they should be in the same place. And now we want to go and create a no draw brush. It's a shame no draw doesn't show up in Portal by default, but we want to select the arch tool. And we're going to create a 128 by 128 by only 16 unit thick. I just screwed that up, so just give me one moment. I'm just going to put it up here, I believe. So that's going to go there. It loads up the tool, and so what we want is wall width of 24, number of size 8, arc 360, start angle 0, and height 0. So if we just OK that, then we get something that looks a little bit like that. And I believe this is actually going way at the top, so right up here somewhere. We want that to go, and maybe with some, you know, grid shifting, we can actually do something more like that. And so what we're going to do is use the vertex manipulation tool on these blocks, and that's not the that's the clipping tool, excuse me. But all we're going to do is take these these like squares, sorry, and we're just going to move them into a corner that would represent like a 128 by 128 square. So that's all that's going on here. Just select every brush and just shift these out, not like that because that's not how you do it. You do something like that. So it's 128 by 128, but it actually fulfills a square brush at the top. And so now we want to go into the inner edge around here, just select all the brushes. It goes without saying you can increase the number of brushes as well. That's just going to cause you to do more work in the grand scheme of things, but it makes the whole look more circular and makes it look nicer. So we want to texture this inside with Metal 61F, which is this one over here. And then the underside of it, we're going to want to texture it with the concrete ceiling texture, although you can use whatever texture you want, but typically it's the concrete ceiling, so we've got to go back to Portal for that. Just excuse me for 1 second while it all loads up. So that's that one right there, and that's that pretty much. So I think one thing you can do as well, if you really want to, which is probably something I'm going to do, is I'm going to texture these brushes here with the decal, well not decal, but it's the signage hazard, this thing. Now it should stem 2, but this is if you want it to, you know, extrude out from the ceiling a little bit by 80 units. You'd want that to show. So you don't want the 2 lines to show, you just want the 1. So that goes there like that. Then what we're going to do next is create the actual shaft inside of the, you know, the top of the thing right here. So we're going to need to make this 128 units tool. And that's not what you want to do. You actually want to use the block tool for that. At least it saves the selection, unlike in, you know, bog standard hammer editor, that would not have been allowed to have happened. So I'm just going to create, you know, 128 by 128 by 16 unit blocks immediately above where we just were, and then shift drag to duplicate up, and then basically create a similar sort of block size at the top up here. I think it's ever so slightly misaligned, so what we could do is just do something like that maybe, or that maybe, just to try and align it a little better with the grids and the worlds and all that. And so we need metal wall behind the scenes 006. So it's going to be the ones that are down here. 006 is this one, which is right here, and probably want to change it to 0 in the Y as well. Then select all of these. These use 006B, so 006B, and you want to hit the top orientation, and then the top here is a texture that's not defined in the Portal texture files for some reason, but it is in the files. It is the orange light, which is right here. Just want to do that, and that's pretty much the basics of the box dropper right there. You've got everything you'd want, and so now at this point we're going to need a template for the box. So what I'm going to do, for the sake of reasons, is I'm going to create a box which is like around here somewhere. Doesn't need to be exact, but what I'm going to do is create it just a little bit above. So just maybe like up here, out of the way. I'm going to create a 128 by 128 cube. Going to go to tools, make hollow, -16 to sort of make it a, you know, cube which with some inside volume at least. And what we're going to do is create a prop physics in the center, close to the center. I've just completely screwed that up. I selected the wrong effing thing, excuse me. So we're going to go into the properties. We're going to find the metal box, which is right here, and we're going to put this somewhere, probably like there in the corner out of the way. Probably put it like there. And one of the things we're going to have to do is give it a name, such as box. So just do that, and then on outputs we want on out of world, exclamation mark activator, and kill. And then on out of world we're going to have logic drop box, which doesn't exist yet, but we will create it a little later, to trigger, and we want that to be an only once condition, so that's probably a 1 in that field right there. Okay, so after this we need to create a point template. So we need to get a point template, put that somewhere, presumably inside of the box, so it's all a-okay. And we're going to call this box template, and the template number 1 to spawn is box, like so. Then we're going to have to go to where our shaft is, around here. We're going to create an env entity maker. Put that near the top of the shaft. Yeah, I know, that's what she said. Put it maybe around here. So it's a little bit down. So it's not going to be flush against the ceiling, it's just a little bit lower. And I'm going to call this something like entity box maker. Yeah, maker. Point template to spawn is our box template that we would have just made. And post movement direction, we can make it go down because, you know, the box is going to fall due to gravity, so might as well just tell it to spawn with downwards velocity. And now all we need is probably up in here where the box is, we're going to need a filter activator name, which is a hello, my name is Gordon entity. And I'm just going to snap it to the grid, probably around there. And we're going to call it filter box, allow entities that match the criteria of box. So that's going to be used by stuff like buttons and that in your map. So that only the prop physics with the name of box is going to trigger outputs and not like the security cameras or anything like that. So now we need to create a logic auto as well. Presumably that can also just come in here. So let's just put that up here somewhere out of the way. And let's just go Alt Enter. And on map spawn, what we're going to do is say that our entity box maker is going to force spawn. So that's just going to create a box immediately from the get-go. Now there is one more little brush we have to add down here by where the dropper is. Of course you may not want to have that force spawn output, but it's down to you really what you want to do with your situation. You know it better than I do. But in this case we're going to want to create a very thin brush around where the lid of the dropper cover is. So that's around here somewhere. 4 units is about there. So maybe a little lower than this. Yeah, that'll do it, I think. Looks close enough. So we're going to Control T, and this is going to be a Func brush. So select that. The name of it is something like, I don't know, tube plugging. And start disabled is going to be set to yes, apparently. So let's just do that. That's just going to be for the box to get stuck on, presumably. And so now we're going to also add a trigger. So I need to find the trigger texture right here. And this is just going to be a 128, 128, 128 unit brush volume. So presumably just around all of here. I'm going to Control T this. Tie it to a trigger multiple, which is just up here. I'm being blind, excuse me. Name is set to trigger box dropper clear. Yeah, I can't find the underscores apparently. Start disabled is set to yes, and the filter name is our filter box. And then we just want to only select physics objects as the flags. And now in the outputs we want to on end touch, we want our entity box maker to give us Microsoft reward points. Oh wait, no, sorry, we want it to force spawn, excuse me. Then on end touch, we want our box dropper cover to set animation of close. We want on end touch the tube plugging to enable. We want on end touch exclamation mark self to disable. Then on end touch we want our tube plugging to disable, but this time after 2 seconds. And then on trigger in general we want exclamation mark activator to wake. Okay, so that's all of that right there. And now we're going to have to create a logic relay. So let's just create that somewhere near the box dropper, presumably within the bounds, probably around there and there. And this is going to be called logic drop box. And on outputs, we're going to have on trigger the cover, box dropper cover, set animation to open, on trigger the tube plugging to disable, and on trigger the trigger box dropper clear to enable. Okay, so now all we're going to have to do is one last little thing, which is some brushes inside of the bottom of the shaft. Now, I don't know about the exact dimensions of all of these, so this is going to be give or take some level of accuracy, I believe. But you'd see this in some of the maps in Portal. So it's basically just going to be some brushes that look like this. And I'm going to save myself a bit of time. I'm just going to shift drag and rotate these brushes to effectively cover this area. It should go something like that, so it looks kind of clockwise, or looks kind of like that. And then there's going to be brushes inside of here that are also going to fulfill some sort of need in this regard. So I believe that's going to go down like that, except that we're probably going to have to stretch that out a bit more, maybe. Or maybe that comes in a little bit actually. Hold on, let's just do that. Maybe that comes down a little bit as well. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. This is just like an accurate guess. You can load up test chamber number 5, I believe, or test chamber number 9 from the Source SDK, or just decompile any Portal map, and that gives you exactly what it is that you need, because I'm only half-assing the job here. But it looks kind of like that. And then all you want to do is drag all of, well, select all of them, holding Control T, tie it to a Func detail, and that in theory should stop boxes from getting stuck up in here. They're going to get, you know, pushed into the hole that's here. Okay, so that's all that sorted. So I believe at this point this is our box dropper. Now I've put it out of here, out of bounds, because what I'm going to do is select everything that's here. We're going to go Tools, Create Instance from Selection. You can only do this with a map that is saved, hence why I've saved the map in advance. But in this case, it's going to go into a folder relative to where I've saved this file. So in my case, it's going to go C, SDK, and then Instances. And what is this going to be called? Well, I'm going to call it something like boxdropper.vmf, just to be sure. Snap instance origin to integer. Yes, let's do that. Convert it to an instance. And there we go. We have ourselves a Func instance, and it is our box dropper. So now what we can do is drag this into our map, and theoretically we can align this to wherever we want to within our map. So presumably we'd have it like somewhere here. Yeah. But essentially now we have a box dropper, and we can give it a fix-up name, which is going to be a prefix. It's going to be needed, and we can call it something like BD1, which stands for box dropper 1. If you really want to, you can go into, you know, edit instance or edit instance preview. That takes you into the map in question, and you can change some things around within this. That's the glory of working with instances. So that's that. I'm going to close out of this, and so all we have to do now is trigger the logic relay that's in the instance for this to work. So in our case, what we're going to have to do is take something like a button here as part of a switch. I've already got some outputs here, but I'm going to say on pressed, then we have to do BD1, which is the name of the instance, then a subtract symbol, and then the name of the entity in question, which we called logic drop box, and then we want that to trigger. Now it's going to show up as an error, but it is going to exist because the way this is going to work is that everything associated with this box dropper instance is going to have a prefix of BD1 before every entity name, and so in this case the name is going to show up as unidentified, but when you compile the map, this is all of a sudden going to exist. It's going to find that logic relay and activate it so we can have a box. Now an extension to this that I did do a while back was to actually expand on this to cover stuff like the weighted companion cube as well as the standard storage cube. So effectively what you can do is just duplicate the box in the template, but call the box CC for companion cube for short. Give it a skin of 1 because that's what the companion cube, you know, has, and then just change template number 1 to CC, create the CC template, and under the weighted companion cube I've added it to trigger the logic drop companion cube. And then you can probably duplicate the filter box as well to accommodate for our companion cube as well. So filter box is still going to exist, it's going to have a duplicate name, but it's going to find this companion cube as well, and that's going to be that. Then we just need to duplicate the box dropper, then just call it entity CC maker. This is going to be related to our CC template. Move that into the same spot. And then there's a trigger here. It's related to filter box, and probably the only thing we need to do is, shift drag to duplicate. And what I'm going to do is call it trigger CC dropper clear. It's related to filter box, but that's either going to be the box or the companion cube. And then just change all the outputs to relate to the companion cube instead of the weighted storage cube. That goes in the same place. And then drag the logic relay over to the other side. Call it logic drop CC instead. And then trigger CC dropper clear is all we need to do there. And now you might think this is a bit redundant, but what we can actually do inside of our main map over here, and as you can see because of instances it's all updated now, is we can specify which one of the two we want to spawn. So typically you would use something like a func instance palms like this. Unfortunately it doesn't work because it doesn't matter what you set the value to be, like an integer, and call it something like box type. If you try to apply it, then it's not going to work. Basically it's what happens. So it's unfortunate that's the case. So yeah, it's a shame. The func instance palms don't work for me, and also there's actually an entity called the func instance IO proxy that doesn't exist. I mean, I just did that here. There's no input or output stuff for func instances in Portal 1 anyway. In Portal 2 there is, just not in Portal 1. So the way I would go about this is to create a logic case, and again you could also put this with the func instance if you want to. So I might as well do that because it's relevant. So just bear with me for 1 second. I know this video is probably going to be really long and unnecessarily so I apologise for that very, very profusely. But we can call it something like box selector. And then effectively all we can do is say on case 1, then anything related to the box dropper we just remove. So there's box template. So I want to kill that on case 1. Whoops, I didn't want that. There's the entity box maker, so we're going to kill that on case 1. Entity, there's filter box. We don't want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of the logic drop box though, so kill that on case 01. Then there's the trigger box clear. We want to kill that. And then select everything, copy, paste, but change it to on case 2, and then replace box with CC. So logic drop CC, entity CC maker, the CC template, and of course CC. So what this is saying is that if you input a case of number 1, then the companion cube is gonna, so the boxes are gonna get killed. I've done this kind of the wrong way around. If you input number 1, then the standard cube is going to get killed and the companion cube is going to be used instead. Alternatively, if you input number 2, then the companion cube is going to get killed and the weighted storage cube is going to be used instead. Just a little something I forgot to mention for the box selector, because we're using the inValue function, you're actually going to want to put some numbers into the cases. So in this case, on case 1 is related to an input of 1. from the logic auto that we have in our main map, and 2 is for case 2. So to clarify, case 1 is to kill the weighted storage cube, so the weighted companion cubes used instead, and on case 2 is for the weighted storage cube and the companion cube gets killed. Now you can expand on this to work for the weighted companion sphere as well if you really want to, so that's just something that you need to keep in mind for doing it this way. So then in this case, if we save it and exit, then we can go to our button, for example, or even a logic auto within this level. That might actually work a bit better. A logic auto within our level, just put that somewhere, and just go into the properties, then add on map spawn bd1 dash box selector in value, I think it is actually. So I think that could be 2 or 1, and then that's going to make it either the companion cube or the storage cube. So if I save this, I'm going to do some map compilation maybe throughout the video just to show you what it's like and how it works, and hopefully it all works a-okay if I've done the video properly. So let's hope I have done it properly. And there's another addition, everyone. I apologise for this, but after more testing, if you want to add in the weighted companion cube and the weighted storage cube like I have here, you want to get rid of this logic auto here, because we've got a logic case which is all the way down here, and what we want to do in this case is to say on case 01, which is that the weighted storage cube gets destroyed, and then we want our entity CC maker to force spawn, and on case 2 we want our box to force spawn instead. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. It's a little backwards, I know, but that's just what you need to do to make sure that the right boxes end up getting spawned and the right entities end up getting removed. And just something to keep into consideration as well, because we're dealing with instances, we can end up selecting our stuff that's over here and move it arbitrarily far away in whatever dimension we want, save it, and then if we go back to our main map and select our instance, we can see it covers a much greater area than it used to, because, well, we've moved the box so far away that it's you know, not going to interfere with any other level geometry potentially. So that's just something I wanted to add as well, just after some testing. And another thing as well, with the way that this is set up, the box can actually end up hitting the trigger and then cause multiple boxes to spawn in quick succession, which is not a good thing. And also maybe my job of doing these no draw brushes isn't actually as good as it could have been, so I apologise for that. That's just a shortcoming of the tutorial I followed to make this tutorial. So yeah, if you just want a better version of this, then just copy it from the Source SDK. That's all I can really say. Okay everyone, after a little bit of experimentation, I figured out a way to make it so a button in your main map can actually select which box you want to drop from this like button output here. So what I've done is I've created a logic compare, and I've gave it a name of box compare, an initial value of 2 and a compare value of 2. And so that relates to the weighted storage cube, the regular box. So when it's equal to 2, so basically when the compare value is 2 and the initial value is 2, when it's equal, then we want our logic drop box to trigger. If it's the weighted companion cube, which is number 1 in our case, then we want on less than, then basically logic drop companion cube to trigger. And then if you have the sphere, then that can be a 3, and then you can have on greater than, and then the sphere trigger to trigger. And there's some other things as well in this logic auto. I've made it so we have an output called on map spawn, box compare set value, and make it the same as the in value from the box selector up here. But if that's the video, then I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think. Sorry this has gone on for so long. I just had this idea months back and never had the opportunity to work on it until around now. And yeah, just let me know what you think. If there's any other suggestions you have or any criticisms of the video, please let me know. And I'll see you next time for whatever I decide to do next. So yeah, take care of everyone.